This is False Start, a college football podcast for everyone and everyone else. I'm your host, John Buhler, lead writer, fansided.com. As you can see, I'm flying solo like a cup once again with Cody Williams on the move, making moves, and his Boston Red Sox taking two from my god-awful Atlanta Braves. But he'll be back on the program on Thursday. We're going to be recording at the ass crack of dawn because he'll be in Eastern time in North Carolina and I'll still be in Atlanta. And then on Monday, we're going to be doing our episode based around the league for 6-9. So that's kind of what we got for you right now off the start of that. Be sure to, hit that like button like Chipper Jones and smash that subscribe button like Andrew Jones that one year he almost won MVP. So let's do that. Let's do that starters. Let's do one for the team. So we've obviously false started a little bit here today. So we're gonna get started with our first and 15 with some Pat the Doc. Yes, Lincoln Riley appears to be on the wrong side of Notre Dame-USC, while Marcus Freeman is totally in the right. For those trying to pay attention at home about what exactly is going on, it seems as though that the USC Notre Dame rivalry is going to come to an end after this upcoming season due to scheduling conflicts. This is a result of USC joining the Big Ten and having to play a more Midwestern schedule. Didn't think that through now, did y'all? But they still would play, if they were still in the Pac-12, they would still be playing every other year in South Bend, Indiana, probably at the end of the season. So like, it's just weird that it's ultimately come to this. So we've got quotes from both Marcus Freeman and we've got quotes from Lincoln Riley. So I'm going to read them off real quick, see if I can do that this early in the morning. So Marcus Freeman's his comments basically let us know exactly where he stands on the matter. It's pretty black and white for me. You want my opinion? I want to play them every single year. When? I don't care. I don't care when we play them. Start of the season, middle of the season, end of the season. I don't care. I want to play USC every year because it's great for college football. Amen, brother. 100% right there with you. And then on the other side of the coin, Lincoln Riley seems to be skating around the issue like he does with seemingly everything. Here's what he told Greg McElroy while on Always College Football late last week. There are some changes that we've all got to accept just because it's part of it right now. Obviously, that continues to move and we'll see how it evolves. But I think any door that closes, there's also a new, really exciting door that's getting opened. I think we can still love what was in the past, but let's don't miss that there's some pretty cool things happening in front of us, in front of our faces right now that we're all kind of in the forefront of. What are we doing? Like, what kind of spin zone crapola is that? This is, I'm just going to be really straight with you. I know we'll talk about this in a later segment for today's show, but it's become very apparent that this is probably going to be his last year coaching USC. This right here, this rivalry potentially going to the wayside is inevitably going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Everybody has been Lincoln Riley this, Lincoln Riley that, but getting rid of one of your three biggest rivalry games that you could conceivably do in the non-conference every year, out of what fear, out of complacency, out of whatever the hell you want to call it, like it's just not going to sit well with USC fans or Notre Dame fans for that matter. Notre Dame wants to basically get something on the schedule for the next 5 or 6 years. USC kind of wants to do it year by year. That's not a way to do business in college football. Go out there, schedule somebody big, put them on your schedule, build around that tentpole event in the years to come. Look, USC and Kevin Warren played a massive part in blowing up the Pac-12 as we know it. They went to the Big Ten. They decided that they wanted more money than what the Pac-12 could provide. They brought with them UCLA, and then eventually Oregon and Washington followed them in the aftermath of that conference dissolving as we know it. It's going to be revamped at some point, but like it's not the Pac-12, it's not the same anymore. So you're basically saying by taking more money from the Big Ten, you're asking yourself to play between 4 and 5 games, maybe four, because you're probably going to play UCLA every year. You're going to be in LA anyway. You're asking to play about 4 games a year, potentially 2 or 3 time zones away from where you actually are. Like that's going to be detrimental. Your body clock's not going to be ready for what would be a 9 a.m. kick or a 10 a.m. kick locally. And you're getting rid of rivalries that you've had in the West Coast. I mean, as a part of realignment, we've seen their rivalry with Stanford go away, rivalry with Cal's gone away, a bunch of other ones, Utah, if you will. But I'm just more of the belief here that it's Lincoln Riley doing more of the same. He'd win a down Big 12. He'd go and go to the college football playoff and lose. And then once he found out that Oklahoma was going to join the SEC, he jumped ship. He went to USC to be, he left Oklahoma to go to USC to take over for an ineffective Clay Helton. And then we find out a year later that USC is joining the Big Ten. And 3 years in, he's basically the exact same that Clay Helton was. I literally can't believe that they hired an air raid guru to replace an air raid guru. It's baffling. Go give Matt Campbell whatever he wants. Needs to be the head coach for this team next year because I think he's not afraid of the smoke. He's not afraid of a challenge. He's not afraid of whatever it is. And look, in the Pac-12, you played 9 conference games every year. You do that now in the Big Ten. What's the difference? Travel? Like you figure it out. You're a big brand. You're a big boy. Put your big boy pants on. Figure it out. I know this gets me so fired up here, but just to kind of see where the two coaches are on completely different ends of the spectrum, it's eye-opening. I mean, what coach would you want to play for? What coach would you want your kid to play for? I'd much rather them go play for Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame than Lincoln Riley at Southern Cal. And probably the thing that bothers me the most about this is we once again we cannot continue to reward cowardice. In any facet of life, like you have to when times are tough, get tough. Go out there and make it happen. I mean, you got to go out there, you got to win bread, you got to provide for your family, you got to do what's right in challenging circumstances. And at every single opportunity, Lincoln Riley has been more and more and more finesse. Like I have a feeling that USC was always going to be in the worst spot of any team joining the Big Ten from the Pac-12. I know people said it was always going to be UCLA. Well, the floor is lower. And I think they've got the head coach who actually cares, who's actually all about UCLA football and Deshaun Foster. I don't know what the ceiling for UCLA is going to be, but like the floor is not going to be that horrific. And then obviously Oregon's at the peak of its powers. They recruit nationally. Washington's been good of late. Jed Fish is a really good head coach. Didn't lose a game at home last year. I expect Washington to be markedly better this year. But really, the big thing that I have here with this is, like I said, this is going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back here. You got to remember, at the end of the day, Jennifer Cohen did not hire Lincoln Riley. That was a Mike Bone guy. Mike Bone is long gone. And, Jennifer Cohen does not leave a really good job there at the University of Washington to go to USC to see it fall apart like this. Like you go there to make a difference, to be an outsider, say, this is what was working for us at UW forever. We should be able to do that and then some at USC. But why is it so difficult? And I don't know. I just kind of feel that like where's the win here for USC? Like to beat Purdue a bunch, like to beat Maryland. Well, you couldn't do that last year. I just think that like every other coach who's worth their weight in salt would want to have that game on their schedule, even if there's a chance of losing it. I think competition brings out the best of everyone. Iron sharpens iron. But, when you've got nothing but paper machetes, I mean, maybe you'll start a fire. When there's smoke, there's fire. And I don't think that Lincoln Riley wants to smoke, even if he is creating fire here. Again, this is it's just beyond me that he thinks he can continue to operate this way. Like, what's the end game here? We all know that one more mediocre year and he's gone, and USC is going to have to make a change. It doesn't matter what they're paying him, what the buyout is. Money's money. There's plenty of it out there. There's more money, money. There's more money. There's more money, 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 money out there than ever before. Um, you can't like, for example, like, okay, I'm a Georgia fan. Kirby Smart happens to went to Georgia and he played at Georgia. Do you think if conference realignment were to happen to the SEC in this hypothetical situation, if there is a way that Georgia does not play Auburn, Florida, or Georgia Tech every year, you're out of your damn mind. They're going to find a way to do that. It's of that importance to the fabric of what that football program is about. You get rid of your rivals, then you're just kind of competing anonymously. We know we've seen that happen with Missouri here in the SEC. They're not playing Kansas regularly. They're not playing Iowa State regularly. They're going to be playing Oklahoma a little bit more, which I think is good. But like you play Texas a little bit. I don't know, but I don't know. But the point is like Missouri's always kind of felt like the stepbrother in the SEC because they weren't able to establish new rivalries as quickly as Texas A&M is. Texas A&M obviously has Texas coming in. They have a rivalry with Oklahoma. They have a rivalry with Arkansas. They've had a budding rivalry with LSU. They've made it happen. They've integrated themselves quite marvelously into this league. And we're only entering year two of this in the Big Ten, but for the most part, like USC is coming in there thinking it's better than everybody else, and it's not. All I can say is let's just hope that common sense prevails and we get this rivalry back on the schedule going forward. It'd be a shame if you lost something that's this significant to a lot of people. It's not my favorite rivalry. I think it's a little bit overrated, but college football is worse by not having it here. So I'm gonna leave it at that. Moving on to our next topic here, we're gonna do some playoffs. You kidding me? I'm gonna take a sip of coffee real quick. Apparently, the 5+11 model is starting to pick up steam among the Power Four conferences. So this runs counter to the 4-4-2-2-1+3 model. Yeah, I got to say that slowly before, and then I pick up steam. So it's all about the notions of each league having a certain number of qualifiers. In the 4-4-2-2-1+3 model, that would require the SEC and the Big Ten getting ACC and the Big 12 getting two, the Group of Five getting one, and the three other spots in a 16-team model would be going to the next three best teams. It could be Notre Dame is national independent. It could be anybody in any conference anywhere as long as they compete at Division One. But it seems as though the 5+11 model, which is the five highest ranked champions and the 11 best next best teams, it's very similar to what we have right now in the 12-team playoff. It's a 5-7, and so let me put it this way: obviously, the smaller conferences, the ACC, the Big 12, and the Group of Five conferences, they all want this because this affords them more bites at an apple potentially. Um, by basically saying that the Big Ten and the SEC are not guaranteed four. Last year, the SEC only got three teams in. Big Ten got four, but that was in the 12-team model. And so those conferences are all kind of voting this way. The and the big part is like obviously the makers and shakers in college football, atop the sport is the Big Ten and the SEC. And there seems to be a division there. And Greg Sankey talked about this a little bit later after the spring meetings in Destin over Memorial Day weekend. It seems as though the SEC head coaches are quite in favor of the 5-11 model. Not that that caught anybody by surprise, but like it seems that the SEC is a little more divided on the issue than really anything else here. The Big Ten seems to be very much in favor of the 4-4-2-2-1+3 model because that's going to get them four teams in every year, even if the conference is down. And basically, like the coaches are sitting here thinking, like, okay, let's say the SEC's got a bunch of 9-win teams in one year. Could you get in more than four teams? Could you get 6 or 7 teams in? I mean, in a given top 25, most years, it's probably changed now with expansion, but you're looking at about 6 or 7 SEC teams being ranked at the end of the year. And if you're winning about 9 games, which would have you probably in the 16 range or something like that, you're in contention for the playoff for them more likely than not. But it's just like the coaches seem to be very in favor of this. The athletic directors are kind of what's pushing back. And again, Greg Sankey works for the athletic directors in the universities more so than the coaches. Obviously, the coaches want to have the ability, to play your way in, not to be like defined by certain parameters of like, oh, this team's get so many bids. It's like, no, just, it's more of like a popular vote versus electoral college, if you will. More, more in that direction anyway. But I think the athletic directors, and I think Trev Alberts of Texas A&M said it very interestingly. Again, this is the former athletic director at Nebraska, former legendary player at Nebraska, former Indianapolis Colts bust. Trev Alberts said something along the lines of for the most part, like we got to know exactly what, the selection committee wants. You know, there's people that would be in favor of 9 games, but like if it's going to be too punitive for the SEC, then maybe we wouldn't want that. And again, it really comes down to like the biggest holdup in everything here is that we got to get some clarity from the playoff selection committee before this happens. If it goes to a 5-11 model, that basically would require the SEC to go to 9 conference games. I think I might have missed that at the top. Again, it's early, but like, look, the SEC knows like they would make a lot of money. We're talking about 8 more conference games every year, 8 more potential flagpole events that conference can continue to build and generate revenue with a very high stakes conference game. You know, somebody might be playing Mississippi State, but somebody might be playing Georgia and everybody else in between. So you're wondering though, like, if you're playing 9 games in the SEC, is that going to be more detrimental to a team's ability to make the playoff than an 8? And that was something that the SEC always was able to hold over other conferences. Is like, have you played this league? Do you know how difficult this is? There's no, I used to always say that the Big Ten has a soft middle belly, a soft tummy. It just doesn't have every conference has its bad teams. Like, but like the middle part of it, like when you're watching Big Ten football and you look at it last year, your 4 best teams, okay, your 3 best teams are Oregon, Penn State, and Ohio State. That's how they finished the season, during the regular season, if you will, heading into the playoff. Indiana was able to navigate the soft middle with a very soft schedule to get in at 11-1. But you're not seeing a lot of teams like the middle or the bottom beating those teams at the top. I mean, Oregon didn't lose a conference game. Penn State only lost to what? They lost to Ohio State, and I don't think they lost to Oregon. They lost to somebody else, and then Ohio State lost to Michigan. Like Michigan's like the only one who has like a win of that caliber of punching up. Whereas you look across the board at the SEC, so what Tennessee lost to Arkansas, Georgia lost to Ole Miss, Texas lost to Georgia, other teams like Oklahoma beat what Florida and Oklahoma beat Alabama or something like that. I'm blanking on it all, but like the teams that are at the bottom can beat up. Kentucky beat Ole Miss. We don't really see that in the Big Ten right now. So I think that's what the SEC athletic directors and are the most concerned about. So and I think in time we are going to get there where every Power Four league is going to have 9 conference games. I believe the Group of 5 leagues will eventually follow suit because there'll be less games to schedule versus the Power Four and get that money grab. So you try to package your stuff together, say we're going to sell more games in league, and we'll see what happens. So that's really the big holdup here. It's like, well, the selection committee, which I think Sankey said, he respects every individual on there. He knows it's a really difficult job, but he's like, they miss their own deadlines all the time. And it's frustrating because like we got to all focus, we got to be locked in, we all got to be, show greater levels of maturity to make this all work before, get to December. Because by the time we get to December, that's when we got to know what the format's going to be for the 26-27 season. Because again, I know we're entering year 2 of the 12-team playoff, but the TV contract, it's in year 12 of 12. And again, we got to figure out exactly like what we are going to be selling to ESPN and beyond that with what kind of like just what kind of package are we putting forth for college football's postseason, the higher end of postseason, if you will. There still will be bowl games and whatnot out there, but excuse me, it's hard talking about yourself. God, don't ever get sick. I've been sick for 2 weeks. But anyway, like the more I think about it with regards to this model, I think it comes down to like, is strength of schedule going to really matter? And strength of record might have mattered to the playoff selection committee, but it hasn't been up to this point with strength of schedule. Like are people going to be rewarded for scheduling tough games in the non-conference? You've got the Nebraskas of the world saying like, oh, we're going to cancel our game with Tennessee because we might lose that game. We already played 9 conference games, and if we just finish in the top 4 of the Big Ten, we're probably going to make the playoff. we can't operate like that. It's the same thing with Lincoln Riley at USC. Like, I know Big Ten's taking a lot of hits here, but like, if you want to be the power two, you got to be the power two. You can't be afraid of anybody. And I know the SEC is just trying to be diplomatic before like they move forward. And I think they are being a little fearful with not doing non-conference games. But again, I really just want to see good college football week in and week out. And I think those 8 additional SEC games that would exist in a 9-game conference schedule, because it's 16 teams playing each other. 16 divided by 2 is 8. I just think that like that opens up more fun, more of what I like. I'd rather see the ninth game on the schedule be something like what Georgia playing LSU than Georgia playing Cupcake State. I just think it's better for the sport to see, yeah, Georgia could lose to LSU and vice versa, but like you want to see these games happen. That's why we're fans. There's a lot of crazy stuff with college football, but the best thing that this sport's got going for it is its games. And we're only going to play 12 regular season games. We might as well make the most of it here. So that's really the big thing here with playoffs. You kidding me? It does seem though that the 5-11 model is picking up steam. And I think it just comes down to like everybody being more in line here. And I think like with this, it's just an extension of what we're already doing. With the 5+7, when it's a 5+7 sort of setup, the competition's rose to the top. Yeah, you probably got teams in there that weren't going to make it otherwise, but Clemson did win the ACC and they got in. SMU made it, Arizona State, Indiana, Boise State. Those were all top 10, 11 teams. And they earned their way in. They were going to make it anyway. The one outlier there was probably Clemson taking the spot from Alabama, but they won their league. So that's really the deciding factor with them as a 3-loss team, a 3-loss team, a conference champion versus a 3-loss team in Alabama with quality wins over Georgia. And I don't even know what else they had. Maybe they beat Tennessee and they lost Tennessee. I don't know. Who cares? But again, the 5+11 model is picking up steam. Should it happen? I think so. Are there holdups? Yes. What are the holdups? It's got everything to do with the athletic directors feeling confident enough to go to a 9-game schedule, knowing that their league may potentially get punished. And we're going to move on to our next topic here with some It Don't Mean Enough. Will a 9-game SEC schedule cost the league college football playoff spots? How about Bill Connolly's 3 permanent rivals? Let's take that on for size here. So Bill Connolly's was a major topic in previous shows on here. His writing is fantastic on ESPN. Definitely check it out. Again, I'm not really much of an analytics guy, but the way that he looks at college football through his lens, through his metrics, provide a lot of conversation pieces because college football is very much a sport of debate. And I think that like just having a little bit more clarity or syntax, if you will, maybe that's not the right word, but like there's so many teams. You're only playing 12 games a season during the regular season. You're not playing everybody in your conference. That's just the nature of the beast right now. The day and age of a 10-team Big 12 playing a round robin, playing everybody is no more. But like what I enjoy about Connolly's writing is he kind of breaks it down in a way that I can at least digest it. And he had his article, definitely check that out for ESPN.com, kind of about the ramifications of what this would mean for the SEC. Basically, his data says if the SEC plays an 8-game conference schedule, more often than not over several simulations, there will be 6.2 teams each year that will win 9 games. That will go 9-3 or better. In a 16-team college football playoff, if you go 9-3 in the SEC, you're about there to get in. So by saying like if they stay at 8, you're looking at about 6 teams every year making the playoff, maybe 5 in some instances, but like more often than not, you're going to have more than what the 4 would be there with the 4-4, 2-2, 1+3 model. And if you were to kick it out to 9 games in SEC play, that number of 6.2 goes down to 4.7, meaning we are looking at just under 5 teams a year winning 9 or more games in the SEC. which you're looking at that means one and a half teams each year are going to not make the playoff out of the SEC based on having a ninth game in conference play because the losses will start to stack up a little bit. Like somebody who'd be quality enough, like if you went 16 teams, I mean, Alabama makes it in, but what if they lost another game? And obviously, you're 8-4, you're not getting in. Nobody at this point thinks that that's the even remotely worthwhile of getting into the playoff. But like I thought about that, that's very interesting. And the way that he kind of derived like the simulation was this is actually really what I wanted to talk about, more so than like the 1.5 teams per year change. He came up with something that I'm always interested in, like what happens when we go to a nine-game SEC schedule. The most logical way to do it is you have three permanent rivals that you play annually, home and away, in a 4-year span. And then your other 12 teams, you play six home, six away, six home, six away. And so you play everybody in your league at least once in their building and once in yours. So I'm gonna rattle this off here. So he actually went up. This is what I love about it. The deep dives here are unlike anything else. So he set up permanent rivalries for all 16 teams in the SEC. I'm gonna take a sip of coffee here, and then I'm gonna tell you who he has as each SEC team's 16 rivals. So Alabama, he has Auburn, LSU, and Tennessee. Obviously, Alabama needs to keep the Iron Bowl with Auburn going and third Saturday, October with Tennessee. Alabama LSU has picked up a lot of steam in recent years. It's not as historic of a rivalry as others, but again, it's a marquee game. They could have had Mississippi State in there. And that's really the big one that he said was on the cutting room floor. I believe in his post, he said something to the tune of like, these pairings preserve all but one of the series that have been played 90 plus times. Alabama, Mississippi State was the one he couldn't squeeze in because Mississippi State has four such series. So that's what that's all about. Arkansas is very obvious. Arkansas has Missouri, Texas, and Texas A&M. Again, so you got, Arkansas hates Texas and vice versa. Southwest Classic with A&M, and then you got battle line there with Mizzou. They need one. That makes sense. Auburn has Alabama, Georgia, and Mississippi State. Obviously, the Iron Bowl, obviously, Deep South's oldest rivalry is maintained. You had Mississippi State in there. Again, they played a bunch, but it's not as historic of a rivalry as you think. But again, you got to get to three permanent ones. You're looking over at Florida. Florida's got Georgia, Kentucky, and South Carolina. Florida, Georgia needs to be maintained. Florida, Kentucky, that's kind of become an interesting one of late. And then Florida, South Carolina, the Superior Bowl. I'm good with that. Georgia has Auburn, Florida, and South Carolina. Again, it was either going to be South Carolina or Kentucky was going to be the one that Georgia got to keep. And I think South Carolina probably needed another interesting rival from the SEC East because they haven't really been able to establish them as much as other teams have. Like Arkansas has been able to establish a little bit more rivalries than South Carolina has, and it's 20 something years since joining the league. Kentucky's got Florida, Tennessee, and Vanderbilt. They play, that makes sense. LSU's got Alabama, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss. So you got Magnolia on there. LSU, Mississippi State, they do play it a lot. Not as huge of a rivalry, but Mississippi State's kind of in the weird cluster. Obviously, Mississippi State's up next with Auburn, LSU, and Ole Miss. Egg Bowl, no doubt. Missouri, you've got Arkansas, Oklahoma, and South Carolina. You've got Battle Line, you've got the Peace Pipe with Oklahoma that's being rekindled from the Big Eight. That's a big deal. And then South Carolina, you've got the Battle of Columbia there. I'm good with that. Oklahoma's got Missouri, Texas, Texas A&M. Again, Oklahoma, Texas with Red River, that makes sense. Oklahoma and A&M, they played in the Big 12 before. That's good there too. Ole Miss has LSU, Mississippi State, and Vanderbilt. Ole Miss and Vanderbilt, they were cross divisional forever. That makes sense. South Carolina's got Florida, Georgia, Mizzou. Tennessee's got Alabama, Kentucky, Vanderbilt. Tennessee, Vanderbilt, obviously in-state rivalry. Texas is Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas A&M. Texas A&M has Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas, and Vanderbilt's got Kentucky, Ole Miss, and Tennessee. Again, check that article out and see what he has down there. Not a lot of complaints there. And I think that like the big thing is like not all schedules are going to be created equal. Some are going to be more challenging than others. I think that, what Kentucky's is not going to be as challenging as LSU's. It's probably the best way to say it. But, if you want to maintain rivalries and you want to be that level of college football program, you got to beat the teams that you hate regularly. So really, as I look at this, like it makes sense. I think the big challenge is like, okay, what teams, are playing four at home and four on the road? And I think that like, how does Georgia Florida play into this? How does Red River play into this? How does Southwest Classic? Although I think that they're playing that game back, away from AT&T Stadium this year, but like the neutral site games of note. So maybe it's like home and home or road. I don't know. Just the revenue of it all is kind of wonky in all of that. So I mean, maybe that's why the SEC hasn't gone that direction. It's like, yeah, it's more revenue, but like one year it's going to be out of whack versus the other. But look, the NFL does this. You have a 17 game schedule. One year the AFC has nine home games. Next year they have eight because the NFC has nine and then eight. So you figure that out. That's a really good way to look at it for what you're going to. You can obviously learn from the Big Ten and how they do it, the Big 12, how they do it. There's other people out there that schedule an odd number, an odd number of conference games. I don't know why I'm coughing so much today. But again, like I do think that a nine-game conference schedule could cost teams playoff spots, but like that's why they got to figure out strength of record. And again, once we get uniformity in college football, I think it'll be better. If I'm of the belief this is what needs to happen, unless we want to get every conference the exact same size, which it's not going to happen because, well, the Big Ten has 18 teams, the ACC has 17 with Notre Dame with loose affiliation, and the Big 12 and the SEC have 16. But here's what I would do. Here's exactly what I would do. I would have a nine-game conference schedule in all four leagues. I would have the SEC and the Big 12 have a competitive balance game scheduled every year. So whoever wins the Big 12 and the SEC, they play. Whoever finishes in last, they play. And then you would also have Notre Dame in this situation be part of the ACC. Maybe just join the ACC. Again, nothing that in this world of college football is basically requiring Notre Dame to have to go want to join a league, but like have them be the 18th team and you have them be the 18th team in what essentially ACC play. Maybe you do it on their record or something like that, where like however they do against ACC teams, like you do it by percentage and put it in there. Maybe they don't go higher than like one or two or something like that. Maybe like the winning the championships is just somehow you figure out where to slot Notre Dame in there from the previous year. Then they have them play the Big Ten in a competitive balance game. That gets you to what 10 conference games or 10 games there. And if you want to schedule somebody in the non-conference, allowing like Georgia to play Georgia Tech every year, that's great. Iowa Cyhawk, that's great too. Um, I think you just having more quality games against your best teams will help us with the selection committee look at it from the perspective of like, okay, all these teams are playing at the same level. They're playing each other a lot more frequently than we even expected. So like you'll be able to evaluate each team a little bit clearer. Like there's a little bit more information. Like the games that they're playing versus like middle of nowhere tech, like that's not gonna help as much as like you beat somebody else to the power four, or you was very close. The margin of victory was the margin of victory in your competitive balance game, so to speak. So yeah, I think that we are eventually going to figure this out because all parties involved need each other to figure this out to keep the sport going. And moving on to our second half of our show, we're going to go with some you missed your mark. God, don't get sick. Don't ever get sick. But anyway, yeah, still banged up today. Kenny Dillingham is kind of uncomfortable being in the the spotlight, if you will, with Arizona State getting all this offseason buzz. Again, this is a team that I think most people are looking at as making the playoff again, possibly winning the Big 12. I have them winning the Big 12. This comes on the heels of I think Big 12 meetings were in Orlando this past weekend or last week. I think that's how that works. Kenny Dillingham was talking about this, and Andrew Adelson wrote this for ESPN. So I'm going to read this out from a quote. This is basically about the changing of dichotomy of Arizona State going from picked to finish last in the new Big 12 to being picked to finish first, probably again a year later. Dillingham said this: "It's less fun, to be honest. It's naturally moving for people to say you suck, and it's way more difficult for people to say you're good. I'm not the one who actually likes the limelight or people telling me I'm good anyway. So to me, it's more uncomfortable. I'd much rather be an underdog. I want to try to be somebody people count on. So I'd say this is definitely uncomfortable to always get positive praise. I'd prefer it to be all about the players than for me to just try to navigate our players and make sure they stay focused on them. I'm trying to be the best version of themselves. So again, it's just a different area. It's a different prism that Dillingham and Arizona State's operating at. They're no longer the underdogs. They're the hunted now in the Big 12. You're too big to be small, man. Like I'm sorry. Like you told us there was a sleeping giant there in Tempe, and you woken it, and it's big. And outside of Cam Scatterbo going to the NFL, pretty much everybody else is back. You replace him with Udo coming over from Army. Levitt's still back at quarterback. There's going to be other high quality teams in the Big 12, whether that be Iowa State, whether that be Kansas State, whether that would be BYU, Texas Tech, Baylor. You can go further down the line there as well. But you're there, you're at that level, and you're not going to be on top for long. Obviously, it's all about putting in the work here. And he had something else here. He said to kind of finish the bit up there with his article or in his conversation with Adelson. He said, I mean, a sailboat doesn't sail on yesterday's wind. You can be as good as you want last year. Nobody cares. We were picked dead last year. We won it. So who cares where we're picked this year? We can finish dead last. This league is so competitive. The combination of like, you can't be resting. You can't be riding your laurels on yesterday's success. You got to continue to put in the work. And that's what I respect about Kenny Dillingham. I did not think he was going to be this good of a head coach. His first time as head coach. Again, he's my peer. He's maybe a little bit younger than me, not by much. He's in his mid 30s. But he knew that this was going to be special. This is his alma mater. He wants this so badly, and it's working out quite well. But like, I was a little bit of side conversation. So a couple weeks ago, I did an audit of our show. I looked at all of our segments for the first 100 episodes on video. I think we're about 107, 108 now. So basically, back to our very first one, our SEC preview from last summer, up until I think the one where it was like, maybe Quinn Ewers a clipboard holder or something like that. Like I went through and I looked at all of our segments. And the first year of the show, we did you're too big to be small for the Big 12, but we decided like, the conference changed a little bit with Oklahoma and SEC leaving. So we rebranded it as You Missed Your Mark. We thought that was great because it's about, Brett your mark and you're missing the boat here. But we found like when we were doing the show, like obviously Big Ten energy and It Don't Mean Enough, we're going to be far more popular segments because of just the nature of the SEC and the Big Ten. But we do more than shoot hoops and turn left that we do for ACC stuff. Like that still got a lot more. Basically, what I'm getting at is that the Big 12 is still trying to find itself in this new identity. It's a hell of a ton of fun in basketball. It's really competitive. But like you still are lacking that traditional power at the top of the league. The one that like the Ohio States, the Georgias, the Clemsons, FSUs, if you will. Like where's that team in the Big 12? And it could be Arizona State. They have a lot of things going for them to make this happen. And I want to say this because I'm obviously in a very serious relationship with the Arizona State podcast, but like you're hoping that, you know, Arizona State and Kenny Dillingham can operate at a different prism than they were a year ago. Like Oklahoma, for lack of a better word, even though I give them a lot of flack here in the SEC, and the Big 12, they operated under this. Them in Texas, they knew what what everybody else in the conference thought of them. They weren't really afraid. Even in down years, they were still really competitive. And this is all about raising the ceiling of the Big 12. Can the best team in the Big 12 hang with the best teams in the other conferences? And last year, we think they can. They looked really good versus Texas for a while. Took them to overtime. Saw that game in person in the big body bins. It was unbelievable for a team that like doesn't have the resources of Texas, because who does, honestly? That was really exciting. But it just kind of goes to show that, like, for the most part, even if you're like it's much harder just to maintain success than building success, because you start to believe you're on hype a little bit. You start to, like, you got to battle complacency every day. You got to find ways to humble yourself to continue to put in the work, because, like, it's not always going to be smooth sailing. Sometimes you got to, put your head down and go. The tailwinds can become headwinds very quickly, and you have to navigate that. And I appreciate Dillingham having the self-awareness to recognize that in this moment, because, like, not everybody does. Some people are really great front runners. Some people are not. And it doesn't really matter where Dillingham and Arizona State falls in that category. I just think that this is a team that's not going to go away. It's not going to be a one-hit wonder. It's the same sort of thing with Indiana too, or SMU, where, like, there's things that all three of those programs are doing that, like, shows me that's like it's gonna continue to build on itself pretty quickly. Whereas, you look at Boise State, like, even further down the line, like, they've been doing this for 25 years. Oregon's been doing this for like 30 years. Like, you continue to build on itself. So yeah, I'm very excited to see what Arizona State can do in the new Big 12. That league's gonna be so fascinating, because this is a team that, like, everybody picked to finish last. And they went 10-2, and they went 11-3. They won the same amount of games as Georgia, same exact record. Um, Maybe not as much talent, but, like, as much heart and belief. That team is a lot of fun, and they've got the right guy leading that program here. So I'm very excited about that with Arizona State and Kenny Dillingham. But, like, it doesn't matter if you're uncomfortable. Get used to being uncomfortable, because that's just life. Moving on to our hot in here with a bunch of guys who have gotten a little too comfortable and could potentially be on the way out. So I wrote about this for fanside.com last week. I wrote about five college football head coaches that need to win early to stave off being eliminated by their ADs. Basically, what this article was about is these head coaches have a really challenging conference schedule, and, like, if they don't get wins early in the season, it could snowball, and it could result in them not making it to a bowl game next year. So I'm gonna take a sip of coffee, and I'll kind of unpack that here in a second. Excuse me. Anyway, so this is a very hard exercise to figure out, because it took a long time. I had to put everybody's schedule in here. So, and I'll say it 5 through 1, and I'll kind of unpack each real quick before I get to the final segment of the show. So at number 5, I had Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State. 4, I had Brent Venables at Oklahoma. 3, I had USC Trojans head coach Lincoln Riley. Like I said earlier, I was going to come back to him and mention him. At 2, I have Arkansas head coach Sam Pittman. At number 1, I've got Maryland head coach Mike Locksley. So with Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State, we're talking about a team that was playing in a Big 12 championship game 2 years ago, had a Doak Walker finalist there in Ollie Gordon. And then the last time they beat a team was Arkansas in the non-conference. The Pokes went over in Big 12 play. And I mentioned this I think it was like on last week on Thursday's episode. I was sold like a cup as well. I said, like, oh, Arizona might be the worst team in the Big 12. It was probably Oklahoma State, because they didn't even win a league game. So obviously the Big 12 plays 9 conference games, and their 3 non-conferences: home versus the UT Martin Skyhawks, at the Oregon Ducks, then they have a bye, and then they have a home game versus in-state rival Tulsa. So you're looking at probably going 2-1 in there, because I don't think you're going to beat Oregon and Eugene. I just don't see that happening. You have to remember that, like, Mike Gundy has been at Oklahoma State for 2 decades now as the head coach. He was their one of their best quarterbacks of all time. He played with Barry Sanders. He played with Thurman Thomas. He was on Les Miles' staff, who I'll talk about here in a little bit in the final segment of the show. And he's been an institution. He's a Hall of Fame level coach. But like, it just seemed that last year was a complete wash here. You can't have that again. It's the same thing with Mike Norvell at Florida State. So the wins to be had for Oklahoma State are early in the season or earlier in the season because I mean, okay, you got Baylor at home, at Arizona, home versus Houston, home versus Cincinnati, and then you kind of get to where it's challenging on October 25th. You're at Texas Tech, at Kansas, then you have a bye, then you host Kansas State, you're at UCF, and then you host Iowa State. Let's say you go 2-1 in conference play. Are there 4 wins to be had here in the Big 12 play for Oklahoma State to move on? So I would say that like you got to beat Arizona at Arizona, you got to beat Houston, and you got to beat Cincinnati. Those you got to basically win those 3 in a row. If you beat Baylor, you might be able to flip your season around, and like you're probably full of a lot of confidence here because at that point you'll be what 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like you already have 6 wins before you get to the tough part of the schedule versus Texas Tech. Of your final 5 games, I mean, maybe you got to win at UCF. I think Kansas is going to be markedly better, and we obviously know that K-State and Iowa State are going to be really good, and Texas Tech is there. So again, it's there's a lot of sentimental reasons there why I think it would be challenging for Oklahoma State to fire Mike Gundy, but like I mean, if you enter that Texas Tech game and your record is something like what you've got 3 wins at that point, like you beat UT Martin, you beat Tulsa, and you beat Arizona, and you got 1, 2, 3, 4. So you're 3-4 heading into your final 5 games. I mean, it's not looking good, not looking good at all. Like okay, number 4, I've got Brent Venables. I think the big difference here is like I think because he does not have the same sentimental attachment to this school as Gundy does to Oklahoma State. Yes, he's got a lot of money. Yes, I understand that there are some challenges there with the potential buyout and whatnot, but like money is money, and you can figure it out. If he doesn't work, they'll probably just get rid of him and Joe Castiglione. I don't think they're gonna get rid of Porter Moser at this point yet, but like there's stuff to be had there with Oklahoma. So again, we're looking at Oklahoma this year. Your 4 non-conference games. You have Illinois State, Michigan at home, at Temple, and then Kent State at home. In a way, like I think you gotta win. I think you gotta win like all those games. With Michigan, I think it's important because um well you've got the former Oklahoma alum. You've got Sherman Moore coming back in town before he does the 2-game suspension. So that would be really positive to win that game. You can't lose at home to Auburn to Jackson Oregon. You can't do that. And then really where it gets challenging is like their 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, their final 7 conference games. Texas at Red River, then you go at South Carolina, home versus Ole Miss, at Tennessee, you have a bye, then you're at Alabama, Missouri, and LSU. I mean, I'm looking at this. So let's say you start 5-0, looking at your final 7 games. I feel like you probably got to win 2 or 3 to make you feel good about Venables getting another year. I don't think you're going to beat Texas. I don't think you're going to win at South Carolina. You could beat Ole Miss. You could beat Tennessee. I don't think you're going to win at Alabama again. You may have to beat Missouri and LSU. Again, like Oklahoma's a team that's got probably one of the most challenging schedules in the country, along with Florida. So keep that in mind. SEC play for them is absolutely brutal. You got Michigan in the non-conference. I think 8-4 is possible, but like if you're going 6-6 again, you got to get somebody else to lead this team. Moving on, moving on down to USC head coach Lincoln Riley. So here's who they've got in the non-conference. You've got Missouri State and Georgia Southern at home, and then a little bit later you've got Notre Dame in South Bend. Man, like I'm looking at this, And again, this is a critical year for Lincoln Riley. Jennifer Cohen could fire him if he doesn't perform. I feel that you need to basically win your first four games before you go at Illinois to feel really good about this. Like you can't lose to Missouri State under any circumstances. You absolutely cannot lose at home to Clay Helton's Georgia Southern Eagles at all. If you do that, you should be fired on the spot. If you lose at Purdue to Barry Odom, you probably should get fired. Maybe you could lose to Michigan State at home, but like that's not going to look good. I don't expect. Looking at USC's schedule, there are three games on there that they're not winning. They're not beating Illinois and Champaign. They're not beating Notre Dame and South Bend, and they're not beating Oregon and Eugene. So the ceiling for USC this year is not terribly high. It's probably 9-3. You gotta go somewhere about 7-5, 8-4 this year. And there are wins to be had. I think if you beat Michigan, if you win at Nebraska, if you beat Iowa and UCLA, Northwestern, like you're right about there. But like again, it can't be playoff or bust for Lincoln Riley this year just because the schedule doesn't favor them to do that. But I think you got to win. You got 8-4 would be a good finish for USC. And if you're 7-5 and you look competitive, then I think I can get behind that. But if you're 6-6 or worse, like we got to move on here. And then moving down to Arkansas with Sam Pittman. God, is this brutal. So your four non-conference games are home versus Alabama A&M. You're facing in-state rival Arkansas State in Little Rock. You got to play at Memphis, and then you host Notre Dame. Like you could go 2-2 with that. Like you could lose to Memphis, and and you're probably going to lose to Notre Dame. So if you're 2-2 right there, that means you got to go 4-4 in SEC play to even get to a bowl game. So in SEC play, you got at Ole Miss, at Tennessee, Texas A&M, Auburn, Mississippi State, and you have a bye at LSU, at Texas, and then Missouri. So I'm looking at these games. Are there four wins to be had? Mississippi State's probably you got to win the Southwestern Egg Roll Bowl Classic. Got to win that game. You probably got to beat Auburn, and then maybe then you basically got to win. Okay, you're not beating Texas. You're not beating LSU. I don't think that that's possible. So there are a lot of there are a lot of games on here for Arkansas that could go either way. But like because they could punch up, but we've also seen them play down. And I think really the challenging part is just the non-conference. If you win that Memphis game, then that gives you a little bit more of a breathing room. But again, it's obviously going to be at the Liberty Bowl, and that's going to be challenging. So, again, this is the same sort of thing with USC, where I think the ceiling is 9-3. Is 6-6 going to cut it? Maybe you just defer it for another year. You maybe you go 7-5, but 8-4 again with this schedule, with a more challenging schedule in SEC play versus what USC has in the Big Ten play. That's kind of why I've got Sam Pittman here, and he's far more likable. People actually like it. People hate Lincoln Riley, so that's really the big deciding factor there. And then and then Mike Locksley there at Maryland. I can't believe he's still got a job. So their non-conference games are Florida Atlantic, Northern Illinois, and Towson and State, all at College Park. You got to win those games. And Maryland probably will. I mean, they could lose Northern Illinois with Thomas Hammock and everything like that. I think Zach Kitley needs another year to kind of get ready for whatever's life's going to happen to him at Boca Raton since leaving Texas Tech and taking over there at FAU. But I'm looking here at what Maryland would be playing in conference play. You're at Wisconsin, and you have a bye. You're home versus Washington, home versus Nebraska, at UCLA, bye, home versus Indiana, at Rutgers, at Illinois, Michigan, at Michigan State. I don't know if there's a win to be had. I wrote like if I had to pick three, I'd say maybe at Wisconsin, at UCLA, and at Michigan State, but those are all on the road. And their easiest conference game at home is Washington, Nebraska, or Michigan. But then again, none of them are really that easy. So you got to find a way to like again, like, can you get to four conference wins? If you get to four, then Loxley probably gets to keep his job. But like, this is a team that could go 1-8 in conference play. They can go 0-9. Um, they're breaking in a new starting quarterback here, and I I just look at this, and the wins aren't there to be had as much as they should be. Um, all your most winnable games are on the road. Yeah, that probably makes them more challenging. Then there's the few at home, but those are, again, maybe makes them a little bit easier. But I don't know. I think that, like I said, the fact that Maryland does not have an easy win to be had anywhere is kind of alarming here. So I'll recap this real quick and I'll move on to the final topic here. The five coaches that I think have to win early in order: at number five, I've got Mike Gundy. He needs to win early at Oklahoma State. At four, I've got Brent Venables has to win early at Oklahoma. At three, I've got Lincoln Riley has to win early at USC. At two, I've got Sam Pittman has to win early at Arkansas. And at one, I have Mike Loxley has to win early at Maryland. Let's finish with some good bowl. Let's do that. This is really exciting, and this absolutely had to make the program. I wish Cody was here. I wish we could talk about this, but the National Football Federation amended the requirements of what a coach needs to get into the College Football Hall of Fame. They have lowered the required winning percentage from 60% to 59.5, and that allows Mike Leach to be eligible. Mike Leach, who passed away tragically, I believe in 2002. Yeah, right before bowl season, everything like that. He had, like, I guess winning percentage was something along the lines of well, like 5.98, 5.96. But he was also playing, or he was also coaching at places that, like, people don't win at. Texas Tech is hard. Washington State's hard. Mississippi State's hard. He won at a very high level at the most remote outpost in the Big 12, the old Pac-12, and the SEC. And obviously, Mississippi State's been reeling since he tragically passed away. Texas Tech is finally kind of getting back to a spot where they might be what Leach was. And then obviously Washington State, it's had a little bit of success, but like, team's going to pull back here a little bit with John Mateer transferring to Oklahoma, Jake Dicker taking over at Wake Forest, bringing a lot of the guys there from Pullman with him. And I believe it's Jimmy Rogers, the former South Dakota State guys, taking over there in Wazoo. So people were very excited about this. This also allows other head coaches of note to be eligible for the College Football Hall of Fame. Les Miles is now eligible. Jackie Sherrill is now eligible, and Rich Rodriguez would now be eligible too. You're thinking Les Miles, he had to win more games. He did, but he had to have 37 wins vacated for you know scandal at LSU. So basically, Les Miles' record at Oklahoma State, LSU, and Kansas, which basically all I did was tear away at that. He's done enough to make the College Football Hall of Fame. He probably will. Jackie Sherrill too. We know him from his days of success at Mississippi State and Pitt, most notably. He's now eligible. And then Rich Rodriguez, from his time at West Virginia, Michigan, Arizona, Jacksonville State, now back at West Virginia. And again, this will all go into effect, I think, in 2027. And I think people did this for Mike Leach. They did this so that, like, it's stupid to, like, deprive a guy who still was going to coach, was still going to probably get to that threshold above, 60% had he have still been alive and kept coaching. I think Sonny Dykes and a couple of other people mentioned, like, Rich Rodriguez, guys who all kind of like grew up and knew about the system and everything like that. They think how great this is for the sport, because I think Sonny Dykes is like, how many people, like, in coaching impacted more people with what he with the air raid? Obviously, his mentor Hal Mummy talked about this too. So this is good bull, because, like, there are college football is weird. College football doesn't make any sense, and nobody embodied that more than Mike Leach for years. Just the quirkiness of it all. We can still compete with the big boys with less talent and less resource advantages in smaller schools if we can run this offense like a well-tuned machine. There are obviously limitations with that. I mean, they don't really run the ball very much. Defense, who cares? But, like, a lot of these philosophies matriculated its way down to high school and then back up to the NFL. Spread the game of football that we like more, where the ball's moving around a bunch, in a large part is because of Leach's use of the air raid. Back before it was kind of a ground and pound, run the ball, defensive control, kind of more of a field position play. This is like we're going to score a lot of points. We got to find balance here and everything like that. But I think Leach just belongs in the College Football Hall of Fame. We'll put Les Miles, we'll put Jackie Sherrill, we'll put Rich Rodriguez in there. And look, I'm of the opinion that like Hall of Fame should be out there to celebrate whatever it is. There shouldn't really be any ridiculous way to keep people out that should be in. And if there's people on the fence, put them in. Again, I'm like, I would never vote for a steroid user in baseball. That's not up to me. But like, I think if this guy got you to like go to games for a decade or got you out of your seat, give you an unbelievable few seasons here and there in football, like, then that should be rewarded. So I'm glad that the NFF did the right thing here and has allowed for Mike Leach to be eligible. It still doesn't allow guys who do not coach a certain number of games. Like Pete Carroll's still got to get one more year. That's not happening. Irk Russell's never going to get in. Howard Schnellenberger's winning percentage is not quite good enough to get in as is anyway. I looked at why not. I'm like, oh, the FAU that he started, yeah, that thing got bad. But of those four, those are the guys that I was always like, they need to be in the Hall of Fame for coaching. At least Leach is going to get in. So I'm very excited about that. This was episode 180 of False Start. You can follow me, John Buhler, on Twitter or the X at Buhler118. You can follow my absent-minded absent co-host Cody Williams at the Sizzle 20. You can follow the show at CFB False Start. Like, rate, listen, subscribe, review on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere there's podcasts. Give us a 5-star review. Do that on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere. It always helps the show grow. Yeah, I'm glad that this is a new month here. June's going to be exciting. Mavis grind. Come back from a wedding in Phoenix and just go 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 go. Obviously, just been a little bit chaotic here at work, but like that's life. And again, maybe that's the tune of the show. Like even when it's trying, sometimes just keep working hard. Just keep making it happen. I mean, this is the summer for you and I and everybody to go out there and get what's yours and then some. Keep putting in the work, keep listening, keep being a starter. Once again, thanks for listening. And this is False Start.